Good morning, everyone. Well, everyone, there's nobody here. Anyhow, the purpose of this class is to try to demonstrate the importance of storyboarding to you. And there were several outcomes which we're looking to accomplish in this. First of all, that storyboarding is a way for you to visualize your story ideas, but also for you to think about some of the cinematic choices which you need to make in communicating those ideas. And that's where the kind of motivated aiming and shot selection reflective part of this comes in. The second outcome of this is for us to think about storyboarding as good practice for all our production exercises. And because if you're involved in a collaborative venture, for example, good storyboarding, that is clear drawings and fairly as comprehensive as possible annotations, will provide members of your production team a very clear idea of what you're setting out to accomplish in each shot. Another supplementary outcome for this is to begin to explore how the continuity system seeks to engage audiences and how shot selection tends to lead their interpretation. So I'll begin with the first slide. So this is our first slide, which, as you can see, is a longish shot, or an extreme long shot. And in the continuity system, this would be described as an establishing shot. So what is the duration of the shot, first of all? Let's think about the titles that we have there. Well, one of the conventions of the continuity system is that a long shot, tends to have a long take. Notice the difference in terminology there. One does not talk about a long shot as having a long duration. One talks about a long take as having a long duration. This is quite important. Many students get this wrong. So why would a long shot have a longish duration? Well, a shot is filled with a lot of details. So audiences take some time to actually take in the detail. And that relates to the purpose in terms of the storytelling. So the purpose of this shot would be to set the location or the setting of the shot, and perhaps the time frame as well. If one thinks about the opening shot of Psycho, it's an extreme long shot which tracks in towards a window, but also has a caption written over it, which is very vague in the terms of Psycho. So at the bottom of our slide there are a few other things which you need to think about. What would the focus of this shot be? What the depth of field? What would the aperture be? So how deep would the focus be? What's actually happening within the shot? And finally, some ideas about color palette, because choosing color palette will set the tone and the atmosphere for everything to follow, especially as this is an establishing shot, so you're establishing atmosphere as well. So let's move on to our next shot. Again, this one follows the conventions of the continuity system, but also introduces some conventions of storyboarding, in particular this kind of storyboarding. So we see there a large unfilled arrow, and in red, I'll just put my cursor there for you. You see in red, we see a linear arrow. So we have this one, which is a large open arrow, which is as I'll describe it. And then we have a closed linear arrow. So the large open arrow is to describe camera movement. And the small arrow there, and in this case, I've identified one person, is to show character movement. That's not to say that other characters aren't moving within the frame. But anyway, let's get to our shot. So our shot is closer to the subject, and in this case, the camera is tracking from left to right. There are several planes of action in this shot, and in the foreground there are traffic. There's traffic which is moving back and forth. In the middle ground, there are characters which are moving back and forth. And in the central third of the frame is the character we're most interested in. Now, this follows the conventions of the continuity system in that our medium long shot follows our long shot, so that we've set the basic location and the setting, but now we've actually come in a bit closer to the subject, and we're looking at location, setting, and particular locality. This shot tries to use the conventions of the continuity system, but also to subvert them a little bit. So, as I described to you, our character there, which I've marked in red, which I'll just put my cursor by, is moving from frame left to frame right. And what the camera does is to track frame left to right in order to ensure that this character remains in the center of the frame. Towards the end of the shot, the camera will come to a halt at the end of its track, and the character will move off to frame right. Now, what we need to think about is the transition from shot to shot. In this case, I've kept it very simple so that what we have are straight cuts. The duration of this shot will be marginally shorter than the other one. However, because of the track, it will be fairly close in length, which gives the rhythm of the shooting a fairly even feel. Now, part of the purpose is to be ambiguous. What it sets out is that this is a busy street and that people are moving back and forth, and the sharp-eyed viewers will see that we're tracking on one individual. But for many people, there will be ambiguity about which individual tracking. But those of us who understand the way that the system works will understand it's the guy dressed in red. Okay, let's move to our next slide, which I think is just... So this is shot 3. Shot 3, again the camera tracks. The character walks into shot from shot left to the middle, and the camera tracks. Now this, again, is closer to the subject. Our character is still moving left to right, and now we've identified our character. He moves into the shot to the central third, and we track with him. And we see something of the actions he's engaged in. He's looking into parked vehicles, presumably with a view to stealing something. Okay. So again, we see the convention here that the camera is tracking from left to right, the character is moving from left to right, and that this shot, because we've made a straight cut from the last shot to this shot, there's continuity in the way the shots fit together. The camera movement is more or less the same, but the camera movement echoes what was in the previous shot, and the movement of character also echoes what was in the previous shot. We stay the same side of what's described in the continuity system as the axis of action. So character movement remains in the same direction. So again, we think about shot type. This is a closer shot, so it's a medium shot. Its duration is about the same as the last one, so we keep a similar rhythm. We now know that we're looking at this character because he's isolated in the central third of the frame. And its purpose is to reveal his intention, his motivation. And again, we look to notes of focus, camera angle, camera movement, the depth of field. So in this case, our depth of field might be a bit narrower so that the plane where our character and other pedestrians is in focus whereas the plane of vehicles moving back and forth is slightly out of focus. Okay, let's move on to frame 4. So our character has come to a halt. Now, in this case, we've understood what our character's actions are, or we have an idea what our character's actions are. And this is a camera shot from a fixed position. Again, it's a medium shot, but there will be movement in this shot here. And the slide, unfortunately, doesn't indicate that yet, but I will do so with the cursor in a moment. So the character has come to a halt. He's found a car that he can steal. And he's looking into the car and exploring ways he can break into it. So what happens here is that the character walks into shot from the left, which connects it to the previous shot, and stops within the central third of the frame. Again, we have the same rhythm and the same movement. Okay. He stops within central third of the frame. The camera is in a fixed position, so he enters from shot left and stops in the central third. We see that he's looking into the car. Then what happens is that the camera, if you think this is where my cursor is, and I'll show you the little drawing down there, which hasn't copied over, the camera slowly dollies in to take a closer look at what he's doing. So I'll do that again. You see where my cursor is? We begin there, and it slowly dollies in, and we get to see his face. So we're moving towards close-up. Okay? So that's shot 4. Moving on to shot 5. Now, something different has happened here. Well, the angle is completely different. It's a reverse angle shot. And what we've done is to break the axis of action. We've actually moved round to the back of our character. We've guessed that he's trying to break into the car now, and now we're actually going to see his actions of breaking into the car. The camera remains in a fixed position for the opening of the shot. And the purpose of this shot is that it piques the audience curiosity, because the audience understand the way that the continuity system is. We're all kind of schooled in this from watching films, but the direction of movement has shifted by 180 degrees because the camera is now behind the character. So the audience are alerted that this action is significant within the sequence. And what we do again is that the camera will track in slowly at the same pace it did before. And again, that connects this shot to the previous shot. The action is of the character who's now breaking into the car. And you can see from my drawings, I'm not great at drawing figures. So I've drawn a strict stick person. But with my explanation, the notes which I've made about this, I'm not doing this off the top of my head, with my explanation, I've been able to make it very clear what the action is in this shot. So we have kind of generic, a generic opening sequence to a movie here, and we'll deal with that in 1 second. Okay, so that's shot 4. It's a very different shot. It breaks the rules of continuity system quite deliberately. In order to draw the audience's attention to what's going on. It's a medium shot, and we track in towards the back of our character, as I've said, like so. Right? We don't necessarily see into the car. It doesn't matter that much. I'm now going to move on to the last shot in this sequence. Right. This is a jump cut from the previous shot. The reason that I've chosen to do that is that by shot 5, we understand that the character is trying to break into a car. So we don't actually need to see him do that. You'll also note that the camera has moved back to the original position. The character is now in the driving seat of the car and he's about to drive away, and within this shot he will drive away. So that's the action of the shot. And the focus is quite a narrow depth of field, so we can actually focus on the character. Okay, so the character drives out of shot towards the right, out of shot right. Okay, the shot type is a medium shot at this point. But I have a question for you to think about. And this is for you to think about motivated framing and think about what comes next. Now, this isn't a whole story in itself. As I just said, this is the opening sequence for perhaps a genre film. So there are three potential shot types as I see it here. First of all, that the end of this shot, the car drives away out of shot and leaves the frame empty. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is that the car drives out of shot right, but the camera pans around from the fixed position to the right, and we see the car driving off up the road until it goes out of sight. And the third option is that the car drives to the right, but the camera tracks with the car. Now, the interesting thing about this is the action remains the same, but the shot selection and the shot type are different, so that the meanings of each shot will be different. So what I would like you to do is reflect on how that impacts the audience interpretation of what will follow. Okay, so that's my presentation on storyboarding, which has only been about 20 minutes or so, but you can understand how storyboarding can communicate story ideas. Now, I've done it verbally here, but of course, you have a story outline, and you would need to think about the shot selections which you choose. You would need to think about the sequencing of your story, and you would need to think about how you draw audience attention to particular phases in the story in order to release your story information in the most engaging possible way. Unfortunately, there's nobody here to ask questions, so I'm going to tie it up there. And I do hope that everybody has enjoyed this, and I want you to think about your storyboarding in yourself. You can see that my drawings are pretty basic, but the drawings with clear annotations and clear explanation help you understand what's going on there. Okay, well, thank you for your attention, and I hope this is useful to you. Okay, bye now.